Dear friends, welcome to yet another installment of Orbital Geek. In this video, we delve into the intriguing concept of panpsychism, the idea that everything in the universe possesses a form of consciousness. Starting from the famous double-slit experiment, we explore theories such as the general resonance of consciousness and integrated information theory. We discuss how these ideas can elucidate mysterious phenomena, from the behavior of quantum particles to inexplicable stellar movements. Could it be that even your smartphone possesses a primitive form of consciousness? And if true, what would be the ethical implications of our interactions with the world around us? Don't miss this fascinating immersion into the nature of reality. Watch until the end and share your opinion in the comments. Here we have a photon, or at least a visual representation of a photon, and here we have a slit and a piece of paper. Actually, two of them. This is the famous double-slit experiment. I'm sure most of you know what happens next. If no one is observing, the photons will arrange themselves on the back wall in a wave pattern, indicating that they traveled through the slits in a superposition of states. If we add a sensor to one of these slits to try to determine which slit it passes through, the pattern on the back wall becomes two groupings, indicating that the photons travel through the slit as particles. If by chance you're not familiar with the double-slit experiment, I have a video about this that you can check out for context. In short, when the particle is observed, its superposition collapses to a particle state. It's one of the most intriguing aspects of quantum mechanics, and frequently, when scientists or science communicators describe what happens here, they say things like, "It chooses which slit to pass through," or "It reacts to an observation." This is a considerable simplification of what happens, but it conveys the idea. It's a bit like when people say that evolution chose to change an animal or a species in some way to adapt to its environment. Obviously, there isn't a being called evolution making a choice here. You know, it's just a way of speaking. Your comment is extremely valuable to us. It helps the algorithm recommend our videos to more people, which is crucial for the growth of our channel, especially at this start of the journey. If you can, leave a comment, even if it's just a simple hello. Your participation makes all the difference. Some scientists and philosophers begin to ponder, what if this is exactly what's happening? What if that photon or particle is really making a conscious choice because everything is conscious? The double-slit experiment is a fascinating example of how matter behaves strangely at the smallest scales, but there are equally strange phenomena at the largest scales. Take dark matter and dark energy as an example. This is the Pandora cluster. The lights you see are stars and galaxies from at least 4 different clusters. All this structure collided in the distant past, and this composite image includes X-ray information in red and the total mass concentration in blue. Do you notice how the blue mass is where there's no optical light? That's dark matter. 75% of the mass in the Pandora cluster is composed of dark matter. Dark matter is believed to constitute 27% of all mass in the universe, and most of the rest is dark energy. And no one really knows what dark matter is. The same goes for dark energy. So, in a real sense, 95% of what should appear in our telescopes is a mystery. Therefore, there are great mysteries at both the smallest and largest scales. It would be interesting if all these mysteries had something in common, as if there were an effect that could explain everything, but we still can't find it. If the universe were a person, I think it would just be playing with us. One theory that attempts to explain the inexplicable in science is panpsychism. The basic idea is as simple as it is controversial. Everything is conscious. Galaxy clusters, conscious. Fundamental particles, conscious. An individual in a coma. It's complicated, but all the cells in their body and all the molecules in those cells are somehow conscious. The appeal of panpsychism lies in its ability to explain mysteries like choices. Maybe dark matter and dark energy don't really exist, and we only believe they exist because stars and galaxies choose to act in a certain way. The same goes for fundamental particles. Maybe quarks, electrons, and photons are not so mysterious because they are making real choices. Yes, I understand. Just stay with me for a moment. Tam Hunt, co-author of the general resonance theory, offered a definition of consciousness in a recent article that helps demystify panpsychism a bit. According to Tam, consciousness refers to the capacity for phenomenal or subjective experience. In this context, phenomenal means something that is felt, and subjective implies a point of view. Therefore, we say that something is conscious if it can perceive from its own point of view. I, for example, can perceive many things: visions, sounds, smells. Now it's clear that fundamental particles don't perceive in the way I perceive, but they possess properties, such as electric charge, that are affected by their environment. Electrons are attracted to particles with positive charge and repelled by particles with negative charge. That attraction and repulsion that electrons perform can be seen as a form of perception, and the fact that this attraction varies with distance suggests that electrons have a point of view. In this way, this can be said about practically any object that has properties and interacts with other things. This applies even to theoretical objects, such as magnetic monopoles and strings from string theory. But how do we advance from perception and point of view to the consciousness that you and I possess? There are different theories that offer different perspectives. In the general theory of consciousness resonance, objects that vibrate in synchronized ways develop a shared resonance, allowing them to combine their perception of consciousness. More complex consciousness, like ours, results from all that lesser and simpler consciousness resonating together. A kind of emergence theory. A somewhat similar theory is called integrated information theory, developed by Giulio Tononi. This theory doesn't go down to fundamental particles like the general resonance theory does, but explores how a system communicates to create consciousness. It also proposes a measure of consciousness, called phi, which actually measures the integrated information of the theory. So, what do I mean by integrated information? Think of color and shape as an example of integrated information. Our eyes don't see red or round, but red wavelengths of light, and depth cues tell us that the red thing curves away from us, thus being round. Redness and roundness are concepts that our brain combines or integrates to show us a red balloon. In integrated information theory, integration is a physical activity, something concrete that occurs in our brains, where our neurons exchange neurotransmitters. In theory, an artificial intelligence could replicate this process, passing electrical signals through its circuits instead of neurotransmitters through neurons. However, most computers are built in a way that prevents them from reaching higher states of consciousness. This happens because the human brain is structured to perform a lot of parallel processing. For example, our perception of a red balloon is processed in several parts of the brain simultaneously, with all those parts communicating with each other. Most computers can't do this due to the structure of their processing units. This implies that, no matter how intelligent these artificial intelligences may become, they will never be able to achieve exactly human consciousness if they are operating on conventional computers. However, neuromorphic computers, designed to be more similar to the human brain, might achieve it. There have been some recent attempts to create neuromorphic computers. DARPA funded a project called Synapse about 10 years ago, and IBM uses neuromorphic chips in its Summit supercomputer. By the way, Summit is being used to help unravel the secrets of nuclear fusion. So, who knows? Maybe we'll get artificial consciousness and fusion energy at the same time. That will certainly be an interesting news cycle. Neuromorphic computers are too vast a topic to be addressed in depth here, but basically, this means they have a greater opportunity to develop consciousness similar to ours than a typical, say, upgraded Dell computer. Anyway, the general resonance theory and integrated information theory are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to panpsychism. There are theories about the role of vacuum energy, quantum fluctuations, and their influence on consciousness. Roger Penrose was a great advocate of the latter. Penrose's theories focused on microtubules. Biological cells are partially supported by these small flexible cylinders called microtubules, and he speculated that, within these microtubules, certain components could exist in a state of quantum superposition. If that were the case, these components could be entangled, and these entangled particles could allow some emergent effects, according to Roger Penrose. Let's imagine for a moment a deep reflection on Roger Penrose's thinking and his vision of consciousness. There is a debate about whether or not he believed in the possibility that consciousness could exist beyond biological organisms, with their microtubules and everything else permeating the universe in some way. The safest statement we can make is that he did not rule out that possibility. Let's avoid delving too deeply into that now. We should note that most panpsychists are philosophers. Neuroscientists and neurologists who venture into this field approach the subject from different angles. Among these thinkers, a physicist, astronomer, and former NASA consultant named Gregory Matloff stands out. Dr. Matloff was led to panpsychism by the work of science fiction writer Olaf Stapledon. If you haven't heard of Stapledon yet, maybe you should. Freeman Dyson said that the Dyson sphere should actually be called the Stapledon sphere, as it was the book Star Maker that gave him that idea. In that same book, Stapledon describes a universal consciousness formed by interconnected minds. That idea ignited a flame in Dr. Matloff, leading him to seek ways to test whether astronomical objects could be conscious. In his 2016 essay, Can Panpsychism Become an Observational Science?, he points out data suggesting that cold and less massive stars orbit the center of the galaxy a little faster than hot and more massive stars. He proposes some explanations for this phenomenon. One possibility is that these stars are directing their energy in a specific direction, generating directional radiation pressure. Another hypothesis is what he calls unipolar stellar material jets, where material spirals towards a massive object, such as a black hole or a star, then being expelled by the poles. Normally this happens in both directions, but if it occurred only in one, it could slowly move the star in the opposite direction over time. And finally, Matloff suggests psychokinesis as a possible explanation. Yes, you heard right, psychokinesis. He acknowledges that this idea is controversial, but if panpsychism and psychokinesis were real, they're big ifs. But if they were, it wouldn't take much to alter the speed of a star over, say, 1 billion years. He suggests that this would require consciousness no greater than that of a developing embryonic cell. Let's avoid delving too deeply into that now. We should note that most panpsychists are philosophers. Neuroscientists and neurologists who venture into this field approach the subject from different angles. Among these thinkers, a physicist, astronomer, and former NASA consultant named Gregory Matloff stands out. Dr. Matloff was led to panpsychism by the work of science fiction writer Olaf Stapledon. If you haven't heard of Stapledon yet, maybe you should. Freeman Dyson said that the Dyson sphere should actually be called the Stapledon sphere, as it was the book Star Maker that gave him that idea. In that same book, Stapledon describes a universal consciousness formed by interconnected minds. That idea ignited a flame in Dr. Matloff, leading him to seek ways to test whether astronomical objects could be conscious. In his 2016 essay, Can Panpsychism Become an Observational Science?, he points out data suggesting that cold and less massive stars orbit the center of the galaxy a little faster than hot and more massive stars. He proposes some explanations for this phenomenon. One possibility is that these stars are directing their energy in a specific direction, generating directional radiation pressure. Another hypothesis is what he calls unipolar stellar material jets, where material spirals towards a massive object, such as a black hole or a star, then being expelled by the poles. Normally this happens in both directions, but if it occurred only in one, it could slowly move the star in the opposite direction over time. And finally, Matloff suggests psychokinesis as a possible explanation. Yes, you heard right, psychokinesis. He acknowledges that this idea is controversial, but if panpsychism and psychokinesis were real, they're big ifs. But if they were, it wouldn't take much to alter the speed of a star over, say, 1 billion years. He suggests that this would require consciousness no greater than that of a developing embryonic cell. Certainly today, artificial intelligence can also recreate images. Does this count? I think this is a fascinating question. There are other similar examples, but we need to be careful and objective, as we have a human tendency to anthropomorphize things. We humans tend to project our own image onto the world around us. We must make sure that something is really looking back at us, and that we're not just seeing our own reflection in things. So, look carefully. We're entering alarming territory, especially when we consider the idea that stars might be moving consciously, as part of the plot of The Fifth Element. Where are we? We're far from that level. At the level of panpsychism, it's not exactly a theory of everything, but something that fills the gaps in our current knowledge, one of the many things we invent. Talking about consciousness emerging from vibrational subatomic particles is a rather uncertain area, but who knows? As we better understand consciousness and the fabric of space-time, we may discover some intriguing connections. Besides, if we were really all part of a universal consciousness, this could help us feel more connected to each other, which wouldn't be a bad thing. Well, we've reached the end of this cosmic journey of consciousness. Although panpsychism offers a fascinating perspective on the nature of reality, it's crucial to remember that we're still in the realm of scientific speculation. The theories presented, such as the general theory of relativity and integrated information theory, are interesting attempts to unify our understanding of consciousness with the mysteries of the universe, but they still lack solid empirical evidence. Science advances through testable hypotheses and rigorous observations, not philosophical conjectures, no matter how intriguing they may be. As we continue to explore these ideas, we must maintain a healthy skepticism and seek ways to test these theories in the real world. After all, if everything were really conscious, this would fundamentally change our relationship with the universe, wouldn't it? And you, what do you think? If your cell phone were conscious, would you change the way you treat it? Leave your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more scientific debates that will challenge your mind.